8 p.m. tonight for Tehran to strike a deal with the United States and reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or face the decimation of all of its bridges and power plants. Tehran reportedly rejected a proposal for a 45-day ceasefire. Instead, it is coming up and offering a 10-point plan that demands an immediate end of this conflict, safe passage through the Gulf and reconstruction and lifting of sanctions. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst. He is chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And we want to get your take. We don't know if, in fact, we can get confirmation on this, but it appears that the Iranians are coming up with this 10-point peace proposal that they say they would drop their demand for reparations and drop their demand for U.S. military withdrawal from the Persian Gulf. Your thoughts on where we are this morning, sir?
Well, I don't think we really know. I mean, the reality is there's still negotiations going on. Certainly the pressure that President Trump has put on the Iranians is significant, and that is likely getting their attention and maybe getting to a better place than where this deal was a few days ago. It remains to be seen. I mean, I do have some concerns about a deal because it may indeed give Iran a lifeline. Eventually they get sanctions relief, they survive, and they're going to trumpet the fact that, you know, they stopped the war because they controlled the Straits of Hormuz, and they were able to leverage that. We'll see what's in the details of the deal. Listen, I have confidence in President Trump. This is the man that rejected the lousy deal that Obama had constructed, which was a pathway to a nuclear weapon. He saw it for what it was, and it gave him, by rejecting the deal, the opportunity to impose significant sanctions on the Iranians, which certainly helped to decapitate them financially. So the details of the deal is what really matters here, if we in fact get one. Given the pressure on the Iranians, I suspect they are negotiating quite genuinely here, because I'm convinced they want this to stop. I know for a fact that our bombing last night was the highest level of the war last night. Wow. So there's huge pressure on them as a result of what's taken place. Yeah. I do have a bias here. I would like to continue this to the end, to the 2 to 3 weeks, so we can accomplish all of our assigned objectives, and then try to make a deal with the Iranians when we really have got them back on their heels, close to an economic collapse, and potentially eventually a change in a regime that would take place down the road a little bit. Yeah, well, but we'll see what we have here. The details matter. Of course. It seems like that's a fact. That's where the president is as well. Now, you mentioned last night the Israeli Defense Forces reporting that it struck one of Iran's last remaining compounds, which produced chemical components. I want to get your take on that. And then I'd love to get your assessment of what the president is asking for in the budget, General, because you've got non-defense spending proposed to be down, and OMB chief voted the fiscal 26 appropriations, enacted the first real cut to spending in 12 years. He said this new budget would mean Golden Dome, troop pay raise, space, maritime dominance, shipbuilding, critical munitions, combat medicine, F-47 Homeland Security nuclear programs, unmanned and counter-drone systems, and artificial intelligence. With your knowledge of really what's needed, sir, what is your take on what the president is asking for in this defense budget? Well, the president and his team really have done some good work here. They clearly understand the atrophy that has taken place in our industrial base for the United States military. And this war obviously is educating everybody on the stresses that is creating for our magazine depth. That means the amount of munitions, the amount of weapon systems that we have available to us. Our budget is built around a one-war strategy, and it's been this way for years, and a quick war at that. Any protracted war, and even that goes on for weeks and months, would begin to stress our capability. And we're just fighting one war with no ground component And it's essentially an air and maritime war here, and it's stressing our magazine depth quite significantly. Can you imagine if we were fighting in two places and we had protraction? The National Defense Commission I was on believed that we would not be able to cope with two wars at the same time. That's the reality of it. So this budget is looking clearly at our deficiencies while we're championing our military and its capabilities in this brilliant operation we just conducted to rescue our airmen, to be sure.
Yeah.
But we also have to be honest with ourselves about what limitations we have. So a $250 billion plus up in the budget itself is a down payment to do that, and then a $350 billion on top of that reconciliation bill begins to get us healthy, and we have to continue it over a 4 or 5 year period if we're going to dig ourselves out of this hole that we dug ourselves in.
Right.
It was the Obama cuts that did it. Following our preoccupation with 9/11 wars, the budget control agreement, sequestration kneecapped us, and we have been trying to recover ever since.
Yeah.
This really puts us on a path to that recovery.
Look, I think we also have to be honest about what our adversaries are doing in the middle of all of this, right? I mean, a new report suggests that Russia provided Iran with a detailed list of 55 critical energy targets in Israel. Ukrainian intelligence says that those targeted sites were divided into critical production facilities, major urban and industrial energy hubs, local infrastructure. And General, the Journal this morning is out with a piece saying China helped cushion the blow of sanctions and fund Iran's war machine. We know that China relies heavily on the Iranian oil, buying 90% of the oil, non-sanctioned oil, and they go around this situation to buy that oil. So your reaction to dealing with our adversaries who have clearly supported Iran in all of this?
We should not be surprised at all by this. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they're all joined at the hip here.
Yep.
They have their own interests in this, in their geographic spheres of influence, to be sure, but they have joined together because they recognize that together they can exploit the vulnerabilities of the United States as the world's global leader. And they did that rather significantly in the previous administration. They clearly took advantage of us. But look what has happened since President Trump has come into power, and now in his second year. They've lost their base in Venezuela. This is China in particular, Russia as well. Not a military base, but their base of influence in the region itself. Right. And the possibility of Cuba going the same route, really quite significant. Russia is bogged down in its 5th year at war. They thought they could take Ukraine in a few weeks. Here it is in their 5th year. And if you just look at it, what progress have they made over the last two years? Not much at all. A little bit over 1% in additional territory. There's no doubt that they're not making anywhere near the progress that they want to make. And here's Iran. The president has taken Iran out to stop them from being a predator in the region. They don't want to lose this footprint in the Middle East. What they see is the regime in Iran getting in so much trouble, not just militarily, but economically, that it will collapse. And they will lose this foothold that they have.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about here. They're going to the UN to try to get resolutions here to stop the war.
Okay.
They want to stop the war because they're afraid they're going to lose their ally and partner here. And yes, they are all in to help Iran for sure, as you just enumerated.
Yeah. Do you think that the president is going to extend this deadline tonight, or do you think 8 o'clock comes and goes and the president said he could take out all of Iran in a matter of 4 hours? What do you think happens tonight, General, real quick?
Well, we don't have a deal until we do. And you know, the pressure is on, and it could be the last minute, things reverse and there is a deal.
Okay.
And as I said, we got to see the details of it. The president, if he extends it, would only do that because they're close to having something and they just need a little bit more negotiating time. Other than that, I think he keeps a foot to the metal here and keeps driving. If he says, one thing we know about this president, if he says he's going to do something, he has a tendency to do it.
That's
so
absolutely
let's believe what he's going to do, and I think the Iranians believe it.
Yeah, for sure. General, always a pleasure. Thanks so much, sir.
Yeah, great talking to you, Maria. Thank you.
And to you, General Jack Keane. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Iran's reaction. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. A lot of people think that you're a hawk. And in many ways, you are. You believe radical Islamic terrorists are an existential threat to the world. I agree with you on that point. But even you put out, you are praying for a deal. You want this deal to go through.
Yeah.
What do you think the odds are?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll know pretty soon, won't we, by 8 o'clock tomorrow? Sure, I'd prefer a deal. And what's the goal of the deal is to make sure Iran cannot be the largest state sponsor of terrorism like they were for 47 years. They can't have a missile program that can affect Europe or the United States, and they forever will be denied a nuclear weapons capability. The Strait of Hormuz not only has to be open, it can never be controlled again by Iran. All the 60% uranium has to be taken out of Iran. There can't be 1 ounce of this 60% grade uranium left in Iran. That would be a bad outcome. They can make a dirty bomb or one day enrich to 90%. So my goal is to get it right. I'd prefer diplomacy, but if we have to use military force, we're going to do it. The one thing Trump has tried to do is get it right. Everybody else talked about it, but nobody did a damn thing. Trump has done it right. Their military has been obliterated. The goals of no nukes, no missiles, no state sponsor of terrorism were inside the 10-yard line. As to the Strait of Hormuz, right now they're charging ships, the IRGC, the Iranians, to go through the straits, and they're taking the yuan, not the dollar. One threat of this whole debacle is if we start allowing the Chinese currency to be traded in oil, that will hurt the dollar. In 1974, every barrel of oil sold and traded in the world is traded in dollars. Now, what are the Iranians trying to do? They're trying to change the currency from a dollar to a Chinese yuan, and that's an attack on the dollar. And that needs to end, too. So I'm very optimistic that President Trump's going to bring this regime to an end one way or the other. I prefer diplomacy. But this time tomorrow night, they're either going to do a deal that makes sense for the world and the region and for Iran itself, or we're going to blow them up.
There seems to me the two main points that you're focused on and I'm focused on, the Strait of Hormuz must remain open. They should never have the ability to close it.
Sure.
And as it relates to the 60% enriched uranium, which I believe was the predicate for the president to go in, when those negotiations with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, a Middle East envoy, failed because they thought it was their inalienable right to have nuclear weapons. Okay. Now, this is not our first rodeo with taking enriched uranium. We did the same thing to Libya. So this would not be unprecedented. And I do believe that if they agree to those two major points, I believe everything else can be worked out. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's about right. What happened in Libya is that Bush 43 told Gaddafi, you know, we want you to dismantle your nuclear program. And he convinced Gaddafi to let America go in and take the centrifuges out, remove the uranium in Libya. That's the model I want here. We know they have about 900 pounds of 60% enriched uranium. That's a big dirty bomb. That's enough to make 8 or 10 nuclear bombs if you get to 90%. There is no commercial purpose for 60% enriched uranium. We need to get our hands on that. They need to give it to us, or we need to take it. As to the Strait of Hormuz, when this is over, if they have the ability to control the straits in the future, I think the world will have failed, and I don't think Trump's going to let that happen. So, again, the idea that they control the straits in the future has got to be off the table. The idea that they can come back as the largest state sponsor of terrorism has to be off the table. That they can never have a nuke, they can never make missiles to threaten us in the region has to be off the table. I prefer diplomacy, but if they don't do that, how many times do you have to be told by Trump, I'm going to do something to you, and he actually does it before you believe it? So this is a defining moment in the history of the Mideast. This is a defining moment for the president. We can't slip this again. Now, the fourth and fifth string, you're not on the team unless you're a nut job. I don't care what string you're playing on. You're not in a leadership role in Iran unless you buy into the radical ideology. Don't be fooled about who the hell you're dealing with here. You're dealing with people that would use a nuclear weapon if they could get it, and they were trying to get it. They've been cheating for years, and God bless Donald Trump for stopping them from having a breakout so they could build 8 or 10 nuclear bombs, and one day they would have used them. So God bless President Trump. God bless Epic Fury. But this is a defining moment. This time tomorrow night, we're going to have one of two scenarios. Capitulation of their desire to rain terror on the world through diplomacy, or we're going to have a massive military attack destroying this regime's capability to ever wage war again.
All right. Senator Lindsey Graham, thank you. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
U.S. President Donald Trump has set his deadline to Tehran of 8 p.m. ET on Tuesday, 3 a.m. Wednesday in Iran, to return to negotiations and reopen the Strait of Hormuz is final, amid intensifying military threats and diplomatic efforts to avert a wider regional war. Speaking on Monday night, Trump warned that the entire country could be wiped out in one night, and that night could be tomorrow night, if Iran failed to comply. He also threatened to destroy key infrastructure, stating that every bridge in Iran will be reduced to rubble and that power plants would be taken out of service, burn, and explode and will never be used again. When asked whether targeting civilian infrastructure could constitute a war crime, Trump dismissed the concern, saying of Iran, "They are animals." Iran's military, meanwhile, rejected the remarks as delusional. Tehran has also formally rebuffed Trump's proposed temporary ceasefire and issued its own demands in a 10-point framework, including a permanent end to the war, demands for sanctions relief, and a reconstruction plan. Despite the heightened rhetoric, some maritime traffic has continued through the Strait of Hormuz, with a Malaysian-flagged vessel among those reported to have passed through the waterway on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Israel signaled the possibility of further escalation, including targeting public transport in Iran. The Israeli military issued a warning on their Persian-language social media channels, warning Iranians not to use trains until 8 p.m. local time for the sake of your security, suggesting that rail infrastructure could be the next target. Israeli media, including the public broadcaster Kan, reported that preparations were underway for a significant escalation should Trump's deadline pass without agreement. Across the Gulf, Iranian attacks and attempted strikes have continued ahead of the apparent deadline. In Saudi Arabia, an overnight attack targeted a petrochemical complex belonging to the Saudi Basic Industries Corporation, SABIC, in the industrial hub of Jubail, a key center for global petrochemical production. Separately, Saudi authorities said they intercepted 7 ballistic missiles aimed at eastern province, with debris falling near energy facilities, and shot down 18 drones. Traffic on the King Fahd Causeway linking Saudi Arabia and Bahrain was temporarily suspended as a precaution amid fears of further attacks before later resuming. In the UAE, air defense systems also intercepted a missile threat, according to officials. At the same time, US and Israeli strikes on Iran have continued. At least 15 people were reported killed in overnight attacks, including 6 bodies recovered from rubble in Pardis, east of Tehran, and 9 others killed in a strike on a residential area in Shahryar, west of the capital, according to officials. In Tehran, Mehrabad Airport was hit, with footage showing a large fireball rising over the facility. Iran's Red Crescent said rescue teams were searching for survivors after an airstrike struck a residential neighborhood in the capital. A synagogue in central Tehran was also damaged in a separate strike on a nearby residential building, though no casualties were reported. Elsewhere, Kashan Airport in Isfahan province sustained damage, while Israeli officials claim to have struck a petrochemical site in Shiraz, allegedly linked to the production of materials for ballistic missiles, though no evidence was provided. Diplomatic efforts to contain the crisis remain underway, but appear increasingly strained by conflicting views of the warring parties. U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal that significant gaps remain between Washington and Tehran's positions ahead of the deadline. Arab officials also told the U.S. outlet that Tehran expects continued joint U.S.-Israeli strikes even if negotiations resume, and believes Trump may yet extend the deadline. Meanwhile, regional mediation efforts are ongoing. Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani has held talks with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, while Pakistan has also sought to play a mediating role. Iran's ambassador to Pakistan warned that efforts to halt the war were approaching a critical, sensitive stage, with the coming hours to set the trajectory of the war.